Hi, I'm Paul Ferranbi, aka IncrediPaul, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. First off, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And if you're listening, you can also watch it on YouTube as well. So whether you're listening or watching this episode, bonus points if you're doing both. Thank you so much for your support. So this episode is going to be a little bit different as I'm highlighting it's a highlight from a talk I gave on leadership for a conference hosted by LSU in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So this is from a couple months ago. Got some video footage of it, so you get to see the interaction, see the people in the room. They asked a lot of really great questions, got some insights. So it was a phenomenal experience, really incredible experience, pun intended. But let's dive right in. Hope you learned something from it. Reach out any questions you have, and let's get into it. Hit the intro.
Turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
I ended up going to the event, got confronted by the people who were hosting it. Fortunately, they were really gracious with me, and they were saying, like, yeah, we understand, like, we wish you just talk to us and not like send an email out. I'm like, yeah, I was full into hero mode, I guess, trying to help people understand the scam. So it was not a scam. Super great event. I actually got to connect with a few people that I had on the podcast as well. So the reason I share that story, kind of like what I mentioned at the beginning, is that when you see people talking about different things, just understand that everyone is human and you should be patient with yourself. So I'm going to share some stuff about leadership. It's a continual process. It's a constant process. You're not always going to get it perfect. Like even me, like I'm constantly reading about leadership, podcasts about leadership, having conversations about leadership. I didn't make the best leadership decision in the moment. So just be patient with yourself. So that was it. Longer than I wanted it to be as far as the story, but I think you get the gist of what happened. But like I said, want to make this as interactive as possible. So asking the question, when you hear leadership, what is leadership? What do you think of? Responsibility. Good. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Yeah. So guiding people versus controlling people. I like that. Any other thoughts? There are really no bad answers. I just want to get like your baseline, what you think leadership is. We're all here to learn together. Any other thoughts? Yeah. So simply put, leadership is influence. So I love this quote from John Maxwell, leadership guru, been doing it 40 plus years. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So if you have leadership influence between your coworkers, your friends, I think we've all been in different situations where something happens and there's different people they look to as like, that is a person that has leadership, that has influence in that moment. They may or may not have a specific title to them, but they do have influence. They have the people. And so I don't know how many of you have had opportunities to work in different areas, but even if someone has a supervisor position, manager position, they may have the title, but then there's a lot of times that people, they don't have the influence because they haven't really worked on their leadership and have the people with them. So towards the end of this presentation, I'll share about like the different leadership levels and what that looks like, because the title is really the first level. There's a lot more to it. And as I'm going through this, just feel free to raise your hand. I'll have opportunity for questions at the end as well. But like I said, I want this to be as interactive as possible. I don't want you guys to fall asleep on me. If you do fall asleep, just don't snore because you'll embarrass yourself as well as everyone else in the room. But I want this to be as interactive as possible. Any questions so far? So some statistics, because we're all in STEM, we like numbers. Harvard Business Review reveals that 58% of people say they trust strangers more than their own boss. 58% of people trust strangers more than their own boss. Global studies reveal that 79% of people who quit their job cite lack of appreciation as a reason for leaving. A recent study of CareerBuilder.com shows that a whopping 58% of managers didn't receive any management training. 0. So that probably correlates here, while they trust the strangers more than their own boss. But yeah, what do you think about that? About those statistics? Do you feel like that's right, wrong, surprise? Here. Sounds about right, yeah? Kind of in agreement? Yeah, I think it sounds about right. I think a lot of it kind of comes down to this last one. They didn't receive any management training. And the thing about leadership is that oftentimes we equate someone who's really good at a job, whether you're in science or tech, engineering, mathematics, you're really good at this, but leadership is a skill in itself. So you can really be good at the technical side, but you also have to develop your leadership skills as well. And that takes effort. So a lot of times we talk about having the soft skills. I don't like using the word soft skills because I don't think there's anything soft about them. They're hard. So I like to call them life skills, because regardless of whatever industry you're in, wherever you work, you're going to interact with people. Like even if you're a computer programmer working on code, you're going to have a team of people, you're going to have a manager, you're always going to interact with people. So that's why it's so important to have those life skills. Any other thoughts about these statistics? This one? That one stood out to you? Yeah.
This might be insightful, but I went into the workforce before I went into higher education. I sort of felt like I was so motivated, and I wanted to do well, and I was always raising the bar.
Yeah.
And I think in my experience, with different employers, that was sort of taken advantage of. Sort of as I expanded, my role, my skills, I was doing more. And I had all these new tasks, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
All these things. But then that was now the precedent, and I never received, a pay raise or.
Okay.
It was just, this guy's great. Look what he does for us now.
And they took advantage of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I might ask, how would you respond to people navigating situations like that?
That's a good question. And I feel like I'll touch on it a little bit, but I think you'll have to dive deeper into your specific situation. But a lot of times we teach people how we want them to treat us, whether or not we realize it. So what we allow. So it's like a delicate balance. So when we're doing certain things, it's like, so you're saying you're trying to move further, develop the skills. A lot of time, depending on, and this is why people should go through leadership training, management training, and understand this, is that just because someone is doing a lot of things, that doesn't mean that's necessarily what they want to do. They're doing it to further themselves for promotion. But a lot of times with leaders and managers, they'll tend to focus on all the other people that are not achieving, and then they'll ignore the person that's continue going further, even though that's probably a person you need to pour into more so they can develop and basically replace you. Because really I talk about leadership being servant leadership, to help people become the best versions of themselves. That's like all I do at IncrediPaul, help people become the most incredible versions of themselves. So I think with that, it's really understanding when you were doing these different things, were you having a conversation about this is what I want for my next step, or what you were trying to develop, or was it that you thought this would help and they didn't have insight into what you wanted to do? And not to say that you may have had the conversation and maybe they just maybe it wasn't the best environment. So I'll ask you, like, did you have those conversations about this is what I want to do next?
I think I definitely made an effort to. And it wasn't just one situation. That was just a trend that I picked up on, in the workforce. But I brought it up because we're talking about management. I think it is a systemic, top-to-bottom problem.
Yes, it is. I agree.
I started getting put into those roles with no training because I wanted to excel.
Yeah. You sought out.
It was part of the problem.
Yeah.
Right? So I think we take things at face value a lot of the time.
Agreed.
Easier, maybe.
Oh yeah, it is easier to not like have to think critically about what's going on and just be like, this is what it is. Yeah. Did that answer your question? Or do you have something deeper?
I think so.
Okay.
I think that was good insight on it.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like I said, if anyone has questions as we go along, maybe I don't know the answer immediately, but I can also follow up with you later. So mention influence, but obviously we know leadership is not just one thing. Like with anything, there's different components wrapped up into it. So influence, as we already talked about, whether it's a coworker, a friend, a spouse, colleague, whatever it is, the influence there. Priorities. Leaders do the right things. Or no, sorry, I said that wrong. Leaders do things right. So there are a lot of times between leadership and management, say managers do the right things, leaders do things right. Because a lot of times when you're in a management role, supervisory role, there's a list of stuff that they want you to do and check the box. But people can sense the heart behind what you're doing if they feel like you're treating them like a task versus you actually care about them as a person. So prioritizing and doing things right as opposed to just doing the right things. Not to say that leaders don't also do the right things, but they also take the time to do things right. But then understanding the priorities, having the vision, the steps, what you need to do. Listening. And I should have just put communication on there because leaders need to be effective communicators. And a lot of times when we think about communication, we think about talking, which yes, that's part of it. I wouldn't say it's 50% of it. I would say like maybe 30% of it. My mom always told me that I have two ears and one mouth for a reason. I need to listen when I speak. And I'm actively working on that like we all are. But listening, and listening in the sense that we're listening to understand, not listening to respond. Listening to understand, not to respond. So how many times, I know, whether it's a friend, family, whatever, you're telling a story back and forth or talking about something, and you're just waiting until you can respond, and then you don't always actually hear what's being said. So that's part of the listening part of it. And that's something, at least fortunately, I get to work on that a lot with podcasting when I have a guest on, to actually listen and be in the moment. Because I have questions set up, but I don't want it to just feel like an interview. I want it to feel like a conversation. So a lot of times when I have questions, maybe I'll ask the first question. I don't get to the rest of them because I want to make sure what I'm talking about is somebody that they actually want to talk about, that they're passionate about. So listening. Motivating. I think this is often what people think about the most when they hear a leader. Someone is a great leader. They have a lot of passion. They're excited. They make you want to like run through a brick wall to do things. It's part of that too. And this, like I said, this is not an all-encompassing list by any means. Influence, priorities, listening, motivating. Do any of those stick out to you guys, to you all? Yeah. Listening.
Understand, because it's just a trend where it's generally just, especially in our culture of the debates, where you're constantly voicing opinions,
Yeah.
constantly having stuff to say about an issue. So it's easy to get into that place where you're just listening to be able to say what you think or say the way you perceive something. And
Yeah.
then I find myself not really listening.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing, helping to develop that aspect of just being able to listen and not necessarily listening because you have to say something.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point. I don't know how that we better develop that. That's something that it's good to kind of work on.
Yeah.
But I think that's disappearing a lot maybe in our context and culture.
Yes, I think it is. And I'll say social media is part of that. And don't hear me say social media and think things I don't like social media, spend too much time on social media. I get it, but it's just understanding the benefits as well as some of the stuff social media brings, that oftentimes we want to spout off our ideas, our rhetoric, all these things. We don't take the time to understand other people's perspectives, because your perspective is just as valuable as someone else's. But what you were saying about developing your listening skills, like with any of this stuff, it's practice. And the first step is really just acknowledging or recognizing that listening is something you need to be doing. Because a lot of times, like we talk about communication, but how many times we talk about listening or active listening? Like, what does active listening even look like? How many of you have heard of active listening? So a lot of you. Does anyone have some tips, or like, how do you know you're actively listening? Or do you know? And I kind of put people on the spot, but yeah.
I think it's just like, well, I don't know if it was, I'm just like I said, I'm something that I'm really kind of working with, just like trying to see like, can I make a summary of what this person is saying?
Yeah, summarizing, yeah.
Summarizing a few words, what this person is sharing, or the feeling that this person is expressing.
Yeah.
Kind of work on it myself, I don't know if that's enough, but that's for me.
Yeah, I think that's a really key part of it, is the summary part. Any other thoughts before? Go ahead. Engaging in conversation to understand. So when you say understand, how do you show them that you understand? I'm just asking. I want to understand what you're trying to say. No, you're good. I just want to know where we're all at. I think summary is part of it. Clarification is also part of it. And then really the nonverbals is huge. So they say that, depending on where you see it, about 58% of communication is nonverbal. Another 32% is your tone, and about 8 to 10% is your voice, the actual words that you're saying. So you can say the same thing a lot of different ways, and that's why a lot of times with social media or text, like, unless you know the person, you can read the same thing so many different ways. When you're standing in front of someone, you have the words, you have the tone, like the rhythm, you also have the body language. So how many times you have a conversation with someone and they're standing like this? Like, what does that usually tell you? Close off. Any other thoughts? Uncomfortable? Yeah. And then even like our facial expressions too. Like, is the person smiling? Are they frowning? Are they looking in all different directions? And so that's something first person to tell you, consistently try to work on, about being engaged in the conversation. Like, we all have our phones on us or smartwatches, whatever it is. There's so many distractions all the time. And a lot of times what I realize is that a lot of people don't really feel like they're being heard. So you can distinguish yourself very quickly by putting your phone away or really engaging in conversation, face-to-face, eye contact, and just being intentional about it. Like, it takes practice. Like, even the other day, last night, I was talking to my friend on the phone, and then I was ordering food, and the Uber Eats came in, and they were sending me messages, and then I wasn't listening to what he was saying anymore because I was trying to respond to this message. And so I had to acknowledge it. I was like, hey, I got this message. I do not know what you just said. Can you repeat back what you said? So I think the other part of it is even acknowledging when you don't hear something. Because how many times we have a conversation or you ask something and someone responds and you can tell they weren't listening. It happens all the time. But you could, even if you aren't listening, you can easily clarify, ask questions like, hey, sorry, like I was distracted by something, or it was a long day, whatever it is. Simply acknowledging it and telling them like, hey, can you repeat that? Or is this what you meant? The clarification, the summary, restating it in your own words, that's a lot of the listening. Does that help? Okay. Any other thoughts? Really good questions. I like the engagement. So another question. What stops you from pursuing leadership? This open-ended question. What are some things in good leadership? Yeah. Oh, okay. Kind of like the past experiences from other leaders that didn't go as well. Okay. Any other thoughts?
I think for me, like depending on the situation, it might be like preconceived notions, like check marks that I have in my head. That
Okay.
Feel like I need to complete.
Okay.
To step into that role.
Okay.
Or that environment, but maybe that's not always the case.
Okay. So feeling like you're not you don't have the skills for leadership, is that what you're saying? Okay.
I think it's like more specific than that, though. Just based on like what experience, these people in that role have this, and this.
Oh, okay.
I might not have that yet.
Oh, okay.
But that also might not be a requirement.
Yeah.
To be in that role.
Okay.
So kind of trying to shift that.
Yeah. At least from what I'm hearing, it's like seems like a little bit of imposter syndrome, not feeling like you belong in there. Okay. And that's pretty common. Any other thoughts or questions?
I would say it's the feeling of the responsibility that comes with it, and feeling like your leader, you're up there and your life also kind of like on the microscope.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that feeling, I don't want that. So eventually,
So kind of like the weight you carry. Okay. Good. Any other thoughts on that? Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought up the sacrifice, because I would tell you that not all people see leadership as a sacrifice, kind of like this servant leadership. I think there's a balance to it, because yes, there's going to be sacrifices. Sometimes it'll be long days, but as a leader, your job is really to empower your team. And so if you're sacrificing because you're not allowing someone else to do their job, then that's on you as a leader, as opposed to empowering them, giving the opportunity to fail. Because I have a different talk I do on resilience and failure. The failure is really the pathway to success. You don't just go through life and just succeed. You fail, and then you succeed. But I like that. Mm. Yeah. 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 And I'm laughing because, people are hard. Like, just think about even for yourself, like leading yourself. How many times do you tell someone to do something and give them advice that you're not even following? And that's just about leading yourself. So I agree there. Like, just understanding what people can do, and it's going to be hard, but it's really understanding the person as well. And we'll talk about it when I talk about like the 5 levels of leadership a little bit. But no, that's a good thought. Any other thoughts? No, good questions, good engagement. Appreciate it. So some typical excuses, and I think I saw this in the app about not a born leader. So I would say I haven't met any leader that wasn't born before. But I think when people say that, they mean like someone that has natural abilities as a leader, which, yes, there are some people who are predisposed to leadership. Like I mentioned, leadership is a skill that you can learn. But I think it's like really with any skills, we have your skills and your talent. There are people who have natural talent in leadership. So you might put in the same amount of time as someone else, and they're just going to naturally be better at it because that's their talent. but that doesn't mean that you can't work on this skill. Because, and I talk about this sometimes, is that there's talent and skill. If you have the talent, you have to multiply your talent by your skill. So maybe your talent is a 2 and someone else's talent is a 5. You work on your skill 5 times and the other person is working 4 times. Like at some point, the person, even though they have more talent, the fact that you're working on it harder, you're going to surpass them. Title and seniority makes you a leader. So title and seniority can make you into a leadership position. But kind of like we talked about, there are a lot of people who have a leadership position, but they don't have any of the leadership skills for whatever reason. Maybe they just didn't want to learn, or they weren't given an opportunity to learn, or they think they're doing the best they can, whatever it is. Work experience makes you a leader. Yes and no. You could have all the experience in the world, but you have to have evaluated experience. You can go through life doing the same thing over and over and thinking, why is it not working? Why is this not working? Albert Einstein has a great quote that says, insanity, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So a lot of times, if we don't evaluate our experience, evaluate our failures, we're doomed to repeat it. And so that's why you can look at someone maybe who's been in the same position for 5 years, and another person who's been in the same position for 2 years, and the person in 2 years might be further along because they've made mistakes, they've learned from the mistakes, and are continuing to progress. And then waiting until you get into a position to be a leader, which is all about the title there. There's plenty of, and I won't get too much into it, but there's plenty of opinions about really who do people look at when you're in a job or experience. Like you might have a supervisor or manager, but then there's someone else who's been working that job like 20 years and they know everything about it, and they are saving the supervisor or manager, and they have no idea. Like they'll tell them, hey, you do this, this, and this is how it works. And then as soon as the manager leaves, this other person who's been here for a while, it's like, this is how you actually do it. That person is the real leader in the situation. Any thoughts about this? Or any other kind of excuses against leadership? Okay. So some tips for leadership, and then I'll talk briefly about a nonprofit I have that actually you all can be a part of completely free. It's for LSAMP alumni, so you can stay connected even as grad students and postdocs. But I'll talk about this and then I'll get into that. So tips on leadership. First off, you all, just by being at this workshop, are taking a step in your leadership. You understand that maybe you have opportunities in your leadership, you want to go a little bit deeper in your leadership, so you're attending a workshop on leadership. Not everyone does that. I know there are 2 other concurrent sessions you could have gone to. First, I should have started with this. Thank you for coming to this session. Otherwise, I would have just been talking to myself. I probably would have still done it, but it's a lot better when you guys are here, so thank you for that. But just simply taking the steps, being intentional with your leadership, but getting involved wherever you can. So that might be in student organizations or volunteering, but really when there's opportunities to lead, even when you feel like I'm not necessarily ready for it, just step into it. We can learn on the way. Thinking of yourself as a leader. So that's why I started it off with that leadership is influence. If you have influence over anyone, maybe you don't even think you have influence, and some homework would be to ask your friends about what are some things that you, as far as different topics or things, that they come to you for advice. Maybe you don't have to ask them, like, think about what people ask you about. It might be as simple as maybe a specific class or a specific project, and everyone looks to you like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? You have leadership in that area. So think of yourself as a leader. Reading leadership books. I know like right now, undergrad and grad school, as far as reading, very hard to do because you're reading a lot of other things. So you can skip that. I would totally understand. I did not read as much in undergrad because there's so many other things to do. But reading leadership books is a good way to do it. Just understanding people who have been leaders, who have gone through leadership, faced different things, learning from their stories, their experiences, going to conferences, like I mentioned, to just understand and get deeper in your leadership. networking, networking, networking. Just connecting with other people who are passionate about leadership, want to develop their leadership. And like I mentioned, leadership there's a whole like array of things in leadership. So thinking about the person, like maybe someone is a really good listener. Maybe someone's really good at prioritizing. Maybe someone's really influential. So looking to those people. So talk about this. I'll go through this pretty quickly. And then at the end, if you have any questions, tell you more about it. It's a lot of words. National Alliance Lead the Acceleration of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. Too many words, so we have an acronym, NALA STEM, or NALA. And so basically what it is, what we do is to unite, support, and build community among all historically excluded peoples in STEM. So this really started from 2020. There's a different nonprofit that was my local LSAMP. So I guess I should have started with this question. Another thing I could have started with. What LSAMPs, I guess, are you all familiar with LSAMP as a whole as far as there's different alliances across the nation? How many people knew that there's 52 different LSAMP alliances? Yes, most people did not. That's why I didn't know that until just a few years ago. So figured you didn't know that either. So that's part of the reason we started this is that I know LS-PAC has brought in alliances from all over. There's an alliance in Chicago. There's one in the Northeast, 52 alliances, each of them made up of 10 universities and community colleges. So trying to build that community and stay connected. What we discovered is that LSAM is a really great opportunity. You can do research, you can stay connected, professional development. If you continue into grad school, there's not as much of, if you do a bridge to doctorate, which I don't know if you guys have heard of that or not. How many of you have heard of bridge to doctorate? A few of you? Okay, perfect. So for those who are in LSAM, I know there's some sort of programming, but depending on what school you go to, you may not have the BD program there, or maybe they don't have spots open. So this is a way for you to still stay connected with people who are in the LSAMP program, and we do different workshops, we go to conferences. A lot of stuff has been virtual because we started in 2020, middle of COVID. In the last couple of years, we've been doing more conferences, but that's kind of the reason behind it. And I'm summarizing, but I can get into it at a later point if you have questions, and I'll be at the resource fair later. So I have over 250 members in continental United States and Puerto Rico. We have a big portion from Puerto Rico. And you kind of see like the map, and I don't think I updated the map yet, because I think we have like about 40 different states now that have different members. We also have a conference coming up. So it's our first ever conference, super excited. We're still trying to figure out where we want to go. I have some thoughts of where I want to go, but we want to make sure it's what the general consensus of the group. So there's a QR code. So, but yeah.
Where are you?
Where am I? Oh, where do I want to go? I want to go to Vegas. This is why it's listed first. And then I'm currently in Nashville, so I don't want to go there because I'm there. But I know the spots are good. So QR code just goes, it's like really 1-2 question survey. If you have thoughts of where you want to go, help us choose somewhere. And so we're still so we've been having talks with the National Science Foundation about the grant for the conference. So that will get wrapped up in the next month or so. So in the next couple of months, you'll have like more official information about the timing, the theme, which we have some things in mind already, but that form kind of makes sure that we're on the right path. And then that just shows the nonprofit, how to stay involved with us, NALA_STEM. So you can scan it or just search NALA STEM. And yeah, if there's time at the end, we can talk about it. But I think I might, how much time do I have right now? Okay, I have time. I want to see if I should skip forward or not. So diving back into leadership, sorry, it's a short commercial there, but I thought it was something that you might want to be involved in for conferences and a way to stay in community with other LSAM people. Like maybe you're located here, you want to go to a school on the West Coast, Northeast, maybe there's an LSAM person that we can connect you with. Like I said, completely free. Leadership is not just a position or experience. So what John C. Maxwell said, like I said, huge fan for him, for Maxwell leadership, been doing it a very long time, is that the position doesn't make the leader. The leader makes the position. Position doesn't make the leader makes the position. So that explains why you have people, leadership positions, that frankly, if I'm being honest, should not be in those positions, but maybe they just didn't have the right resources, or like talked about at the beginning, is that a lot of times they feel like if you're really good at the technical side, you can lead people on the technical side. But as soon as you start leading people, your job is not to do the technical side anymore. You can do it, but you can't interfere with leading your people. You need to empower them, remove those roadblocks. And a lot of times people don't understand, and they still try and do all those technical things, and then they're undercutting their team, and then all sort of things happen after that. But 5 levels of leadership, really diving in. So all of that really was just a precursor. So take it, like, if you got something out of that, great. I'm getting into the meat of it right now. The 5 levels of leadership. You start at the lowest level, you work your way up, and you're building on each level. So it's not just like, oh, I was at this level, I moved to this level, I'm done. Like, you're building on it. It's a process. So just take a second and think about people that you have influence over you. Think about people who have influence over you, whether it's a parent, colleague, professor, administrator. Just take a second, a few seconds. It'll feel a little bit awkward, but a few seconds, just think about it. Does everyone have at least one person in mind? Okay. So just hold on to that for now. I'm going to talk about the 5 levels of leadership. So I will tell you what they are right off the bat. I will dive deeper into them, and I'll go back and repeat them again. So 5 levels of leadership: position, permission, results, reproduction, pinnacle. You're like, great, Paul, those are a lot of words. What does that mean? I know position, you talk about that. I'll explain. Level 1, people follow because they must. Like, manager, supervisor, you don't do what I say, I have the power to fire you. Professor, you don't do these things, I have the power to fail you. They follow you because they have to. You don't have a choice. That's the first level, very basic level of leadership. And a lot of people just stay there. It's like, I got the leadership position, I have the title, I can do whatever I want. Wrong. You are there to empower people as a leader. So like I mentioned on there, authority is based on the position. This is an opportunity to learn, because you have the position, but you need to be learning how to develop your leadership. And there's a lot of aspects of emotional intelligence. How many people have heard of emotional intelligence? A couple people. And so emotional intelligence in itself is a whole, like, 2-3 days. You can go super deep into it, but emotional intelligence, for those of you who raise your hand, maybe you're already familiar with it, is really understanding how you manage your emotions to work for you. It is not ignoring your emotions. It is not saying that your emotions don't matter. It's acknowledging your emotions, understanding how you think, how you react, but then saying, like, these are my emotions. This is what's actually happening. This is what's going to make me successful. Very hard to do, especially in the moment. It takes practice. But yeah. Any questions about level 1, the position level? I said, that's the level that most people are familiar with. So I figured that. Level 2 is permission. People follow because they want to. They follow because they want to. So this is at the level that you're building relationship with your people. And when I say building a relationship, people are like, so I have to be best friends? No, you don't have to be best friends with them. But you need to know them as a person. Because kind of like what you were mentioning earlier, you had specific things that you wanted to get out of the position. And maybe you voiced those opinions or thoughts, but they did not take that and What is your name? Colton. Did not take that and say, okay, Colton wants to develop this. We see him in this area. How we're going to set up Colton for success. So if they don't develop the relationship and they're just at the position level, we'll see, well, Colton is in this position. He's doing a really great job there. We don't want to lose Colton to another position because then we have to train someone else. And that is not building a relationship because they don't care about you and what your desires and what you want. All they care about is you as like a number. So that's why this level is really important, the relationship piece, understanding what drives people, what motivates people. But it doesn't mean that you know everything about them or that you're best friends with them.
Sometimes technology is great, other times not so much. So in this case, my mic actually died in the middle of it. So it became a silent movie very quickly, but there's no caption, so you kind of lose the effect. But if you want to go deeper and learn more about the 5 levels of leadership, I actually talk about it in a 6-Minute Saturdays episode that I'll link in the show notes. It is only on video, so if you're an audio person, you might have to just watch on video. But it's a short episode, 6 minutes. You can definitely do that. But I will share the last 3 so I don't keep you in suspense, and they can go deeper by watching that episode. And I also talk about it in some other previous episodes as well, because it's really something that's foundational to leadership. So go through it very quickly, but the 3rd level is the production level. People follow you because of what you've done. And then the 4th level is a reproduction level. So instead of people following you, you are creating leaders. So reproducing, you're creating leaders. The 5th level is one level that most people will never get to. So it's not something that, I mean, you can aspire to it, but it takes a lot. And this is the pinnacle level. So think of your Mother Teresa's, your Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s. So this is when your levels of leadership, levels of influence really transcend you, and other people see it outside of whatever realm that you have worked in or experienced. So whether you're a person of faith or religion, respecting Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and Mother Teresa as amazing, incredible leaders. So those are the 5 levels. You can go to 6-Minute Saturdays to check it out. So the whole episode was really just examples. You can see my interaction with the audience. At times, the audio was not the best, but if you are on video, you saw that I was listening to different people as they were sharing some stuff, and then I repeated back what they said. So if you prefer that, that's fine. Like, obviously, to have a mic so you can actually hear what they're saying would be more ideal, but I didn't want you to kind of get the sense of the people in the room, all of that stuff. But all that said, I really appreciate you listening to and watching this show. I know there's so many other things, so many other distractions, so many other things you could do with your time to learn, to interact. But I hope you got something from this episode and something you can apply, something you can learn from. If you have any feedback from me, definitely don't be afraid to reach out. Again, thank you so much for your support of the podcast, and I hope you continue to be incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible.